Have you ever noticed how some folks seem to grow more peaceful and content as they age, while others become increasingly frustrated and bitter? What's their secret? After talking with hundreds of seniors over the years, I've discovered it often comes down to what they choose to let go of. Today, I want to share 7 things you might want to stop doing after 65 to create a more peaceful, fulfilling life. These aren't complicated lifestyle changes or strange new habits, just simple adjustments that can make your golden years truly golden. I've seen these changes transform lives, and I believe they can transform yours too. Let me tell you about my friends Richard and Thomas. They're both 72, retired from similar careers, and have comparable health and financial situations. Richard spends most days complaining about politics, how the neighborhood has changed, and how nothing works the way it used to. He's constantly stressed, has trouble sleeping, and rarely sees his grandchildren because they're always too busy. Thomas, on the other hand, decided a few years ago to let go of several habits that were making him miserable. Now he sleeps well, has a close circle of friends, and his grandkids regularly stop by just to chat. Same age, similar circumstances, but completely different experiences, all because of what Thomas chose to stop doing after 65. The first thing to consider letting go of is comparing your life now to your life then. This might be the hardest one for many of us. We look in the mirror and compare ourselves to how we looked at 30. We try a physical activity and compare our performance to what we could do at 40. We attend a family gathering and compare our energy level to what we had at 50. My friend Dorothy struggled with this for years after retiring from her teaching career. I used to be able to stand all day, remember every student's name, and still have energy for evening activities, she told me. I felt so diminished when I couldn't keep up that pace anymore. But then something shifted for her. One day, I realized I was living in a constant state of disappointment because I was measuring today against yesterday. It was like I was stuck in a time that no longer existed. Dorothy started practicing what she calls present appreciation, focusing on what she can do and enjoy today without measuring it against the past. Now I appreciate that I can still take a good walk, even if it's shorter than before. I enjoy teaching my one art class a week, even if I can't manage a full schedule anymore. I've found new activities that work for my body and energy level now. The change in her outlook was remarkable. Within months, her persistent headaches disappeared, she was sleeping better, and friends commented on how much more relaxed she seemed. I'm not less than I was before, she told me recently. I'm just different, and there's peace in accepting that. Consider Samuel, who was a champion tennis player in his younger years. After 65, he became increasingly frustrated with his declining speed and power on the court. He was constantly comparing himself to his former abilities and felt only disappointment. His wife suggested he try a different approach, focus on the joy of still being able to play rather than how he played in the past. It took time, but eventually Samuel found pleasure in the game again. I'm not the same player I was at 40, he said, but I can still hit a decent ball and enjoy the sunshine and friendship. That's enough. If this first habit speaks to you, comment number 1 below. I'd love to hear what specific comparisons you're ready to let go of. The second habit to consider dropping after 65 is keeping up with the Joneses. For many of us, much of our adult life was spent in a subtle competition with friends, neighbors, and co-workers who had the better car, the bigger house, the more impressive vacation, the more successful children. But one of the gifts of aging is the opportunity to step off this exhausting treadmill. My friend Barbara spent decades worried about appearances and status. After her 65th birthday, she made a conscious decision to stop caring what others thought about her home, her clothes, or her lifestyle choices. It was like putting down a heavy backpack I'd been carrying for years, she told me. Suddenly I had all this energy for things that actually made me happy instead of things that just impressed other people. Research shows that people who can let go of social comparison and external validation after retirement report significantly higher life satisfaction. One study found that seniors who focused on personal interests rather than status symbols were 3 times more likely to rate themselves as very happy compared to those still concerned with keeping up appearances. I saw this with my neighbors, the Jacksons and the Millers. The Jacksons stretched their retirement budget thin, trying to maintain the same lifestyle they had during their high-earning years. The luxury car, the country club membership, the designer clothes. The Millers, meanwhile, downsized to a smaller home, drove modest cars, and focused their resources on experiences they truly enjoyed: weekly dinners with friends, arts classes, and visits to see grandchildren. 5 years later, the Jacksons were stressed about money and arguing constantly, while the Millers had created a peaceful, joyful life within their means. Letting go of keeping up with the Joneses doesn't mean letting yourself go. It just means making choices based on your own values and comfort rather than external expectations. Margaret traded her high-maintenance hairstyle for a simpler cut, switched from dry-clean-only clothes to washable ones, and replaced her heavy makeup routine with a simpler skincare regimen. "I look good for me now, not for some imaginary audience," she told me, "and I've saved thousands of dollars and countless hours that I now spend on things that bring me real joy." Comment number 2. If you've already experienced the freedom of letting go of what others think, or if you're ready to start. The third habit to consider dropping is holding on to grudges. If there's one thing I've learned from working with seniors for over 30 years, it's that grudges are heavy burdens that only grow heavier with time. My friend Howard carried anger toward his brother for over 20 years because of a business disagreement. At 68, Howard had a health scare that made him reevaluate his priorities. He decided to reach out to his brother, and they began the slow process of healing their relationship. "I realized I might die with this anger still eating away at me," Howard told me. "What a waste that would have been. Those years are gone forever, but at least we have now." Scientists have actually studied the physical effects of forgiveness, and the findings are remarkable. Seniors who practiced forgiveness had lower blood pressure, better heart health, stronger immune systems, and reported less depression and anxiety than those who held on to resentments. Dr. Karen Williams, who researches aging and emotional health, explains it this way: holding a grudge activates your fight-or-flight response, creating chronic stress in your body. Forgiveness, on the other hand, calms your nervous system and allows your body to use its energy for healing and wellness instead. I think of Martha and Ruth, sisters who didn't speak for 15 years after an argument about their mother's care. When Martha turned 70, she decided life was too short for such estrangement. She wrote Ruth a letter, not defending her actions, but simply expressing love and a desire to reconnect. Ruth, by then 67, had been thinking along similar lines. Their reconciliation wasn't immediate or simple. They had to work through old hurts and learn new ways of communicating. But 3 years later, they're taking trips together and helping each other through health challenges. "I can't believe we wasted all those years," Martha told recently. "The things that seemed so important then look so small now." Forgiveness doesn't mean saying what happened was okay. It doesn't mean you have to become best friends with someone who hurt you. It simply means releasing the emotional burden so it stops hurting you. Comment number 3, if you've experienced the freedom of letting go of a grudge, or if there's one you're thinking about releasing now. What weight might you put down? The fourth habit to consider dropping is saying yes when you mean no. Many of us, especially women of our generation, were raised to be people pleasers. We joined committees we weren't interested in, hosted events when we were exhausted, agreed to babysit when we had other plans, all because we couldn't bear to disappoint others. But after 65, it's time to recognize that your time and energy are precious resources that deserve to be spent according to your own values and needs. My friend Elaine was the classic people pleaser, the one everyone called when they needed something because Elaine never says no. At 66, after a bout with pneumonia left her depleted, she realized something had to change. I was running myself ragged, taking care of everyone else's needs while neglecting my own, she told me. I realized that every time I said yes to something I didn't really want to do, I was saying no to something that might have brought me joy or rest. Elaine started practicing what she calls the thoughtful no. Instead of automatically agreeing to requests, she began saying, "Let me think about that and get back to you." This gave her time to check in with herself about whether the activity aligned with her energy level and priorities. She discovered that people respected her boundaries more when she was honest about her limitations. Now, when I do say yes, it's because I truly want to help, not because I feel obligated, and that makes a huge difference in how I feel about the commitment. I watched two friends handle retirement community volunteer work very differently. Carol said yes to every committee and project, quickly becoming overwhelmed and resentful. Jean was selective, focusing her energy on the library committee she truly cared about and kindly declining other requests. After a year, Carol was burned out and quit everything, while Jean was thriving in her chosen role and finding deep satisfaction in it. Learning to say no isn't selfish, it's self-awareness. It's recognizing that you can't do everything, so you should focus on what matters most to you. This doesn't mean withdrawing from community or family life. It just means participating on your own terms. William loves his grandchildren but found overnight visits exhausting. Instead of avoiding them completely, he now invites them for shorter, more frequent visits where he can be fully present and enjoy their company. "I'm a better grandfather now because I'm not pushing past my limits," he told me. "The kids get my best self, not my exhausted, irritable self." Comment number 4, if you're working on setting better boundaries. I'd love to hear what you've learned about saying no. The 5th habit to consider dropping after 65 is worrying about things you can't control. If there's one thing our decades of living have taught us, it's that much of what happens in life is beyond our control. Yet many of us still spend hours every day worrying about the economy, world events, our adult children's choices, health problems that might arise, or countless other possibilities. My friend Robert was a worrier all his life. After his 68th birthday, he had a revelation. I realized I had spent thousands of hours worrying about things that never happened, and the things that did happen were usually nothing I had worried about anyway. He decided to try an experiment, to limit his worrying to 15 minutes each morning. He would write down his concerns, consider whether there was any action he could take, and then deliberately set the worries aside for the rest of the day. The results were remarkable. Robert's sleep improved, his chronic digestive problems lessened, and his wife noticed he was more present and engaged in their daily life. "I'm not saying I never worry," he told me, "but I no longer let worry consume my days. I acknowledge my concerns, do what I can, and then focus on enjoying the present moment." Research supports Robert's approach. Studies show that chronic worry activates stress hormones that can damage the body over time, while practicing mindfulness and present moment awareness actually strengthens the immune system and improves heart health. I think of two women in my senior community, Patricia and Helen. Both had adult children going through difficult divorces. Patricia spent her days anxiously making calls to her son, researching divorce laws, and losing sleep over a situation she couldn't fix. Helen, while supportive of her daughter, recognized that this was her daughter's journey to navigate. She offered love and a listening ear, but maintained her own daily activities and peace of mind. 6 months later, both children were finding their way through their challenges, but Patricia had made herself ill with worry, while Helen had remained a calm, steady presence for her daughter. Letting go of worry doesn't mean not caring. It means recognizing the difference between concern that leads to helpful action and worry that just creates stress. James, at 82, uses a simple question to distinguish between the two. Can I do something about this right now? If yes, he takes action. If no, he consciously redirects his thoughts to something more productive or enjoyable. I've learned that worry is not preparation, he told me. It doesn't prevent problems. It just prevents joy. Comment number 5. If you've found ways to tame the worry habit, I'd love to hear your strategies. The 6th habit to consider dropping is accumulating more stuff. Many of us grew up in families that experienced lack, whether during the Depression, wartime, or other periods of scarcity. We learned to hold on to things just in case and found security in having plenty of everything. But after 65, continuing to acquire and store more possessions often brings stress rather than security. My friend Alice had a beautiful home filled with a lifetime of collections: china, books, art, clothing, and countless bargains she couldn't resist. When she turned 70, her husband's health declined, and they needed to downsize to a more manageable home. The process was so overwhelming that Alice became physically ill, trying to sort through decades of accumulation. If I had known how these things would burden me later, I would have started letting go years ago, she told me through tears. Contrast this with my friend David, who adopted a one-in, one-out policy when he retired at 65. For every new item that came into his home, something had to leave. I realized that at this stage of life, less really is more, he explained. Every possession requires space, care, cleaning, and mental energy. By simplifying, I've created room to breathe and think. 5 years later, when David needed to move to be closer to his daughter, the transition was relatively smooth because he had already curated his belongings to what was truly meaningful or useful. Research shows that living with less clutter is associated with better mental health, improved focus, and even better physical health in seniors. One study found that women who described their homes as cluttered had higher levels of cortisol, a stress hormone, than those who described their homes as restful or restorative. I've seen this play out countless times. Those who continuously acquire more things often seem more anxious and overwhelmed than those who have learned to let go. This doesn't mean you need to become a minimalist overnight. It's about being intentional with what you bring into your life and home. Margaret started with just one drawer, then one closet, then one room. She asked herself simple questions about each item. Do I use this? Do I love this? Would I buy this again today? If the answer was no, she found a new home for the item, often with someone who would truly value it. There's a lightness that comes with letting go, she told me. Each thing I release creates space for experiences rather than maintenance. Comment number 6 if you've experienced the freedom of letting go of excess stuff, or if you're ready to start the process. The 7th and final habit to consider dropping after 65 is trying to change other people. Many of us have spent decades trying to improve our spouses, fix our children, or reform our friends. We offer unsolicited advice, make helpful suggestions, or drop subtle hints about how others could do things better. But here's the truth I've learned after working with seniors for over 30 years. People rarely change because we want them to. They change when they're ready, for their own reasons. My friend Joseph spent years trying to get his wife to be more outgoing and social. He corrected her stories, suggested better ways to express herself, and consistently pushed her to attend more gatherings. At 67, after a heart scare, Joseph had an epiphany. I suddenly realized I might have spent my last years trying to change the woman I claimed to love instead of appreciating who she actually was. He made a conscious decision to stop trying to improve his wife and instead focus on seeing and celebrating her quiet strengths. Their relationship blossomed in ways he never expected. I've observed this pattern repeatedly. When we finally drop the exhausting effort to change others, we create space for genuine connection. Research supports this too. Studies show that feeling accepted as is one of the strongest predictors of relationship satisfaction. Dr. Robert Johnson, who specializes in relationships in later life, explains, after decades together, continuing to focus on changing your partner creates chronic tension. Accepting them, truly accepting them, creates a foundation for late-life intimacy that can be profoundly rewarding. This acceptance applies to adult children, too. I think of Martha and James, both concerned about their son's career choices. Martha continued to send him job listings, offer unsolicited advice, and express her worries about his future. James decided to trust his son's journey and focus on enjoying their relationship as it was. 3 years later, Martha and her son had a strained relationship marked by short, tense visits, while James and his son had developed a friendship based on mutual respect. The son's career situation hadn't changed much, but James's acceptance had transformed their relationship. Letting go of trying to change others doesn't mean stopping all feedback or honest communication. It means releasing the agenda that others should be different than they are. It means recognizing that each person is on their own journey, making their own choices for their own reasons. As my wise friend Ruth puts it, I finally realized everyone has the right to make their own mistakes, just like I did. That's how we all grow. Comment number 7. If you've experienced the freedom of accepting others as they are, what changed in your relationships when you let go of trying to change people? These 7 habits, comparing yourself to your younger self, keeping up with the Joneses, holding grudges, saying yes when you mean no, worrying about things you can't control, accumulating more stuff, and trying to change others, can drain the peace and joy from your retirement years. But here's the good news. You can start letting them go today. You don't need to tackle all 7 at once. Just pick one that resonates with you and begin there. Which one speaks to you most strongly? Drop the number in the comments. I read every single one. The most powerful thing I've learned from working with vibrant, content seniors is peace doesn't come from having a perfect life. It comes from letting go of what doesn't matter to make room for what does. I've seen remarkable transformations when people embrace this wisdom. It's never too late to choose peace over habits that no longer serve you. Every day is a new opportunity to let go of what weighs you down and embrace what lifts you up. Speaking of which, I'd love to know which habit you're most interested in dropping. Give this video a thumbs up if you found it helpful, and subscribe for more practical wisdom on making the most of your golden years. I release new videos every day with simple, science-backed ideas for living your best life after 65. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss them. Remember, the most peaceful people I know aren't those with perfect lives. They're those who have learned what to hold on to and what to let go of. Until next time, wishing you days filled with the peace that comes from letting go.